Yeah, that's right. No better way to start that Jamieson show than with some classic Alice Cooper from way back in the day there. And it's great to be back here in the New York studio next week, right here on that Jamieson show. The great Dennis Miller will be joining me. I did his podcast a few months ago. We talked about all kinds of socio-political stuff, coronavirus. I get him on my turf. We're going to talk rock and roll. Dennis is a big rock fan, so can't wait to have him. But what better way to re-christen the New York studio than a man who has hung out with Groucho Marx, a man who has been immortalized in art by Salvador Dali, and a man that once turned down Raquel Welch in her prime for a date. Here he is, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, Alice Cooper.
Hey, so I sound pretty amazing, don't I?
I go deep with you, Alice. I know all this oddball stuff, but I hope you let Raquel down easy. Is all I got to say.
Well, I had just met my wife now of 44 years, Cheryl, and you know Cheryl.
Sure.
She's in the show. In fact, that opening segment, she was in almost every one of those scenes. She was 18 then, and she's still in the show. And she plays a better characters now in the show than she did then. Yeah,
she was 18 and you liked her.
Yes, very much so. It was one of those things where here's a little 90-pound ballerina against a battleship. And I kind of took the tugboat. And in the long run, she says, smartest thing you ever did.
Hey, listen, absolutely. I'm always amazed, especially by showbiz couples who have had as much longevity as you and your wife. 48 years of wedded bliss versus, 48 minutes of a romp in the hay with Raquel Welch. Although we should put a picture of her up in her prime, because it's a little closer maybe than some people think. She was quite the hottie back in the day there, Coop. But you're a better...
Yeah, but love is love. You fall in love and you can't help it. You can't... It's people... My kids always say, how do I know if it's the right girl? I go, you don't have a chance.
Yeah.
When it's the right girl, you don't have any say in it. You just go ahead and Raquel, the thing about Raquel that people don't know, song and dance. She's a total song and dance. She's got everything. She had every single part of show business down. I mean, she could do the whole thing. They always used to kind of look at her as the bombshell, but she was so talented, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, very true. But I think the strangest woman that you've ever been associated with has to be Jean Stapleton, a.k.a. Edith Bunker, from All in the Family, because, this picture's been making the rounds on social media. Can you tell the story that accompanies this photo of, I think this was at Studio 54, Alice?
It was, I'll say, yeah, it might have been actually. Yeah, no, I never wore makeup at Studio 54. We had a coming out party at the Ambassador Hotel, the Alice Cooper coming out party, where, all the stars were there. And they were at the height of, All in the Family right then,
Yeah.
And it was, and Jean was great. She was really, really cool. It never got sexual. Trust me.
If you turn down Raquel Welch, I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to resist Edith Bunker.
Everybody was there that night, though. It was great. It was, you've seen the movie Hell's a Poppin'.
Yeah.
Olsen and Johnson. Okay, that's what that party was. It was anything could happen. Everything did happen. And we made sure that it was the most ridiculous night of all time.
Yeah, I don't think Archie would have approved of that outfit, but luckily there was no social media back then for that kind of picture to spread around. We were talking right before we came on air here. Obviously, in Arizona, things loosening up a lot more than here in the Northeast. But one of the fun things that's come out of this awful situation is you've also become a meme recently. Because obviously the kids are not going back to school. And I love this.
Oh, yeah.
Governor Cooper.
Every day there's something new that's great like this. I love stuff like this. School's out for summer. Totally.
Yeah. And then you tweeted it out and said, we've got no choice. So
yeah,
it's good to.
Well, who knew that song was going to be the national anthem? You know, I mean, we didn't know that when it came out. It's every single, I don't care what country you're in, on the last day of school, that song plays.
Yeah, it is amazing, and again, I'm glad that we actually were able to get there's some levity to all this doom and gloom. So I was really happy to see that and see you embrace it. Now, before we talk about the new podcast, you know, my favorite Alice Cooper album is this one right here, From the Inside. This is a brilliant album, and you were sent away to battle your. Or to fight your battle with the bottle, as you say in the liner notes.
Yes.
You got any stories about this album?
Well, first of all, the lyrics were myself and Bernie Taupin. Bernie and I were best friends.
Yeah.
And when I went into this place, I realized after about 3 days that I was the only one in there for any alcohol or drug abuse. Everybody else in there were super rich, and they were kind of hiding. They were they had a choice of going to jail or going there. You know, one lady owned a steel company. One, you know, I mean, there were people in there hiding from the IRA, you know, and I got all these stories. When I got sober, I started going, this is a haven for songwriting.
Yeah.
So that album, every single person in that album was somebody that I met in there. Jackknife Johnny, Millie and Billy, you know, all those characters. I called up Bernie when I got out, and I said, Bernie, I'm going to tell you about 12 or 13 great stories, and then we've got to write this album. And so we kind of ping pong back and forth. He'd write a line, I'd write a line, he'd write a line, and of course you try to end the line with a unrhymable word. So, you know, he'd say orange. You know, and I'd go, okay, well, you could have an orange door hinge. Close enough. Or you could be on a horror binge. That's, you know,
true.
There's a lot of words that you could run. But anyways, it was a non-Bob Ezrin album, which was very weird because all my other albums were Bob Ezrin. And David Foster produced it. And so the backing band on that was Toto. The actual band that played on that was the Picaro brothers, Lukather, Davy Johnstone played on it. I mean, I had guys like Maurice White was the only duet he ever did in his life was with me on Quiet Room. So, I mean, it was like so many different stars on that album. And it was I got to pick anybody I wanted, and David Foster knew everybody. So that's why that album might be the most musical album we ever did. Yeah,
it really is. And you can definitely hear the influence of Bernie Taupin on there. And obviously it's such a super personal album. You battling alcoholism, and they didn't have the Betty Ford Clinic back then, where they sort of treated you with kid gloves. They threw you right in with all the quote unquote crazies, and somehow you came out on the other side okay.
I felt totally at home after 3 days. The first 3 days, I felt like all my nerve endings were on the outside of my body, not on the inside. If anybody just put a glass down too loud, it was, you know, because you're really not coming off as much alcohol as you're coming off sugar.
Yeah.
You know, when you get the DTs, it's more sugar that you're coming off of, because I was drinking Seagram's VO and Coca-Cola. And so that was a ton of sugar going in all day.
Yeah.
And, you know, for 10 years. So when I quit, just stopped, my body was going, where's the sugar? Give me the sugar.
Yeah.
I lost so much weight. I mean, I went down to nothing once I stopped drinking.
Yeah, and you were already thin, but the other album that I'm glad that you're celebrating the 40th anniversary of, and I know there's a period of albums that you say you may or may not even kind of remember making, and this might be
the Blackout albums.
Yeah, the Blackout albums. I think this is on the cusp of those albums, which is Flush the Fashion, but you embraced this album, and you've been tweeting about it and letting people know that, yeah, it's 40 years since this came out.
Well, you know, that album was, I worked with Roy Thomas Baker on that album. And I had never met anybody as odd as Roy Thomas Baker. He was decadence personified. You know, I mean, when you hear of decadence, Roy Thomas at that period, if they were ever going to do a life story of Nero, he would have been perfect. You know, or Caligula. Right. He would have been the perfect guy. He'd call me up at sometimes, and I'm not exaggerating. He'd, Alice, darling, is my Rolls Royce at your house? I seem to have lost it last night, and I seem to be handcuffed to my bed, and I can't get out. As 2 little chippies last night, and you know, and I'd go, okay, you know, here I'm supposed to be the decadent guy, and I'm you know, I'm nothing compared to this guy.
Yeah, when Alice Cooper is the rational voice in the room.
Yeah, when I'm the voice of reason, you know, that's not right.
Hey, here's another fun thing from the internet that I love, because I had never thought about this before, but somehow social media makes you think of things that you'd never normally considered. Who would play you in a movie when they make the Alice Cooper movie?
Well, if Johnny Depp were better looking, maybe. I always tell him that if you would break your nose and, you know, and get really, you know, I never really thought about that, but there's probably some young guys out there that could play. You know, when they did that TV show, Vinyl,
yeah,
the one that Mick Jagger and Scorsese did, they found this kid that did a pretty good job, and before he happened to live 3 doors down from Calico, my daughter.
Oh, wow.
And Calico's one of the groundlings, you know, and he says, well, tell me something about your dad that I can really, really get right. And I said, okay, tell him that, first of all, I never swore. And I never stumbled. Even when I was drinking, I never slurred a word, and I never stumbled. I said, I was always, you know, I was Dean Martin. I had that golden buzz going, but I was always the most on target alcoholic there ever was. I was never too drunk to work, anything like that. Yeah. So he played it pretty well. Yeah, you know, and I talked to Mick after that, who was one of the producers of it, you know, and he said, how did you like it? And I said, well, the only thing that was wrong was my swing was a lot better than the kid that they had on there.
Yeah, not stumbling or slurring is definitely way more scary. Because on the internet they claim you and Steve Carell are doppelgangers. I'm sure
that was the weirdest thing. I saw that.
Yeah,
and you know what? I can totally see it. We have the same eyes and the same smile.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. I never thought of that. But if you put my hair on him, go ahead. Somehow you can. I know you. Yeah, maybe Steve Carell would play me. That would be great.
Talk about the new podcast. It's Alice Cooper's Vintage Vault.
You know, first of all, I'm going to tell you, I am the biggest techno-tard on the planet. I don't have a phone. I don't have a computer. I don't text anybody, anything like that. If I was going to call you, Don, I'd just call you and say, and you'd be shocked because you get a phone call, you know.
Well, I definitely would be.
But when they came up with this idea, I first had to say, what's a podcast?
Yeah.
And then, because I'm watching Ghost Adventures and stuff like that. And then when they explained it to me, I understood it, of course. And I said, well, this is a great idea to go into old interviews and kind of like comment on them. I think you have to be an elder statesman in rock in order to do this, because I look at the list and I know everybody on that list pretty well.
Yeah.
And so I can pretty much speak for their personalities, you know, and what they were saying and how they were saying it and what they were doing, and, you know, give a couple little backstage stories every once in a while, how it compares to what my life was on the road or is still on the road. I'm now 72. And I'm in 2 touring bands. They got the Vampires, Hollywood Vampires, and my own band. So I'm working twice as hard now, and I've never felt better.
Yeah.
So, you know, all these people here, I can sit there and go, oh, yeah, you know, he's ready to retire, quitter, you know.
No, I listen, Alice. I've learned what retirement feels like during this lockdown, and I know
Oh my
exactly
gosh.
why you don't, and then I never will, and anybody who's a performer will never retire because out of all the things, out of all the misery and all the heartache that's going on, the thing that I miss the most, even more than financially, is having a stage to rage on. It really is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was in Germany. We were doing a thing called Rock Meets Classic. It was Robin Zander and myself and the guy from Manfred Mann and all these guys with a 90-piece orchestra, a rock band, and a choir. And we would each do 6 songs of our own, but with this orchestra. So we're doing Only Women Bleed, though, and this huge orchestra comes in. It's spectacular. We got through 6 shows, and in Berlin, they said, okay, you got 2 days to get out of town. We're going to close the borders. So, I figured, well, that'll last for 2 or 3 weeks. That'll be nice to have 2 or 3 weeks off. I have never had 2 months off in my life, 3 months off. So this is weird, having this much time off.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. See, my wife and I are like Burns and Allen. We're like vaudeville. We're looking for that stage to be on. And, it really is going through withdrawal.
Yeah. All right. I got a couple more minutes with you, so we're gonna wrap it up on some questions that I reached out to former and/or current band members of yours.
Oh, great!
And we'll see. Let's see if we can get some answers on them, and see if you know who asked them. Former guitarist of yours asked, which of your former bandmates came closest to you ending his life with a golf ball?
Oh, Damon Johnson.
There you go.
Came pretty close to knocking my head off with a golf ball. It actually broke my finger because I had that thing where I just went like that as fast as I could, and the ball caromed off my finger and missed my head. But I still have a broken finger. Damon Johnson, am I right?
That's right, yeah. The way he phrased it, I thought you almost killed him, but he almost killed you. So
no, he almost killed me, yeah.
And then a former bassist of yours asked, ask him what color the Tag Heuer watch he bought me after he bought it from a pawn shop.
Oh, which bass player was that? Wow, I had a lot of bass players. Wow.
I'll be more impressed if you can remember the color of the watch.
Yeah, what color was it again?
It was silver with a blue face. You bought it at a pawn shop, and then you gave it to him.
Wow, which bass player was that?
You also gave him a Scottish a knife, I believe, as a birthday gift. One of those knives that you carry in your sock.
I didn't stab him with it. Okay,
yeah.
Well, that's good. All right, that had to have been, boy. It's not Prakash John.
No, a little more modern.
It's not Dunaway. Wow. I went through a watch phase for a long time with Eric Singer. Eric Singer and I did this whole watch thing for a long time. I give up on that one.
It was Greg Smith.
Oh, Greg. Okay, Greg. Yeah. Horrible poker player. Just awful poker player. Great bass player. Yeah. Horrible poker player.
I'll tell you, he's playing with Ted Nugent now, which is great. So
yeah. Well, that's a good mix right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last one, a current band member says, "Hey, Alice, I know you're a big fan of Paul Butterfield because I am as well. Do you remember what song it was that made you want to pick up the blues harp? Was it a Paul song or someone else?"
Well, when we were kids, we had to literally learn how to play Love Me Do by the Beatles. That was harmonica. And then the Stones came along, and there's a lot of harp in the early Stones stuff, early blues stuff, but nobody played harp like Paul Butterfield. He was the Tiger Woods. He was the Beatles of the harp. He was hitting notes that weren't on the harp. It was like anybody that's a guitar player, I say, if you haven't heard the East West album with Mike Bloomfield and Elvin Bishop, I said that, you're absolutely missing probably the best guitar tandem I've ever heard in my life, ever. So that's probably either Ryan Roxy or Tommy. I don't think it's Nita, because Nita, I don't think would know who Paul Butterfield is.
No, let's go to the bass player.
Oh, Chuck. Well,
Yeah.
Chuck is Chuck is old school bass.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And but I mean, I always emphasize, listen to this album. If you've never, because I talked to Elvin Bishop when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I said that East West might be the best guitar album I've ever heard in my life. And he says it was all live in the studio. And I said, what do you mean? And he says, one take. Are you kidding me? Wow. That album is one take. It's impossible. He says that band was that good.
Yeah.
And I honestly think between them and the Yardbirds, were the two best live bands I'd ever heard.
Well, all your former bandmates all speak, obviously, in the highest regarded about you. They've all learned so much from you. And obviously, you're still making music. I know you're going to have an album at some point with the original Alice Cooper Band, which is super exciting. And people should check out the podcast, which is Alice Cooper's Vintage Vault. And I appreciate some time today, Alice.
Oh, thanks. Always good to talk to you, man.
You too. Be well out there and keep on golfing, and hopefully we'll be rocking with you soon, man.
All right. And the next time you see us playing, come on down. All right.
Thanks, Coop.
Okay, man.
Be good.
See you, Don.
Awesome visit from the great Alice Cooper.